Experience the most efficient system for delivering sulfur and phosphate to meet your crop's needs with Smart Nutrition MAP plus MST.
And welcome back to Real Ag Radio here on this Wednesday midweek edition of the show. Busy week, even though it's a short one because of the Labor Day holiday, but harvest well underway in most of Canada. Lots happening. Lots also happening out there in the markets as well. We're joined by Chuck Penner of Leftfield Commodity Research here. Chuck, how are we doing?
Doing okay, hanging in there. It's been a bit of an interesting week.
It has. We saw the market down on Tuesday on the news that China is looking or accusing Canada of dumping canola. I guess before we get into the market reaction, what's your sense of that accusation and the potential validity of it? Any insights there?
Well, I hate to use four-letter words, but bunk would be one of them that I would use.
Well, that's where you went. Oh my goodness.
See, I just turned 60 yesterday, so I can use those kind of words, right? Yeah. Anyway, no, there is no basis in it. The accusation has been that, well, canola exports to China had really been booming in 2023. Well, that's just because all of the restrictions that China had put on Canadian canola, as your partner there pointed out on Twitter. They had put these restrictions on, and they only came off in late 2022. So it was just, the market returning to normal. So the changes in trade flows, increases in imports have nothing to do with whether there's been dumping going on. And the fact that, they talk about, well, it being below the cost of production. Well, again, like, who has control of that? Do farmers have control of whether they're selling below the cost of production? No. We're dealing with big Australian crops and, big Ukrainian crops and so on in 2023. So it was just a normal market reaction that prices did what they did. So, no, there's really no basis, but we already know that, right? We know that it's a political decision. It's retaliation, and in fact, they said that in their press release. It was related to the tariffs that Canada wants to put on EVs and on steel and aluminum and those kind of things. So it's just the game that China plays. I would say it's very similar to the situation that Australian barley went through a few years ago. I would say there's some pretty strong parallels there, and that's kind of what I'm using as a bit of a guide. The problem is that I don't think, unless there's some, unless Canada would backpedal on some of these tariffs, and I don't think they will. I don't think we're going to see China backing down on this investigation either.
Okay, so it's an investigation. So I want to make sure we have clarity here on what's happening. Canada can still ship canola to China, even though this accusation or investigation is underway, correct?
That's correct. And again, if you use the Australian situation, barley situation as the template, that investigation took 18 months before they announced the tariffs, which ended up being 80%, and shut down trade completely. So that took 18 months. The Chinese documentation says it can take up to a year, and they can extend that by another 6 months if need be. So it's not an immediate shutdown. It's not even a short-term kind of a thing. And so, that's I guess the good news is we have some time to prepare,
right.
And it's not going to be the immediate catastrophic kind of a situation.
Yeah, different than what we saw pre-2023 with the Huawei CFO related canola issue, where they targeted Richardson's and Viterra and said, "Hey, you can't export." So essentially, locking things really down, really preventing canola from being shipped. And at the end of the day, we can get into some of the canola ended up there anyway through other means. In this situation, it almost looks like they forced like a, like you go to Costco or you go to Sam's Club and things are on sale. Like the market goes limit down on Tuesday. We're recording this on Wednesday morning. The market has definitely opened lower, not to the same extent. So things are on discount. And does China just walk in and say, "Well, thanks for the discount, Canada. That we really appreciate this."
Well, not only China, but maybe some
Others.
other buyers as well too. So yeah, that's certainly the case. I'm not clear how much gets traded in the last day or two at these levels, but it's certainly an opportunity for that. Again, if I go back to I'll probably do this a couple of
Go
times,
ahead.
is this Australian barley thing. So when that happened, and that lasted for 3 years, so that's the in this whole situation, right? Um, but what happened is that Australia had to find other markets for its barley, and really had to discount it. So they moved it into a lot into the Saudis, but also Thailand, Vietnam, like a whole bunch of countries that they normally don't export to. But what that did was it brought Australian barley values well below where the rest of the world market was trading. They just had to blow it out the door. We're not facing that same kind of a situation to the same degree with canola, but we may be at a situation where Australian canola becomes the premium market, and Canada trades at a discount. And that's a little different than we've had the last couple of years, where Canadian canola has been trading at a premium because of the strong crush demand domestically. But Canadian canola has priced itself out of some of these markets, like Mexico, even Japan to some extent, Pakistan, UAE, a number of these markets. And so, yeah, it does have a depressing effect on the market for sure. But it's not like we won't be able to ship canola. It's just we won't be able to command the premiums. The outlook early in the season had been we had been pretty bullish on canola, and now it's not that we're turning bearish, but yeah, it's a lot of that enthusiasm or whatever has kind of faded with this.
Yeah, and I would imagine grain companies and exporters, it creates caution for them because they don't want to have a boatload of canola and concerned, well, it just doesn't get there in 24 hours, right? There's some duration risk on that shipment and not being able to deliver if China takes a more extreme measure in the meantime. It does increase the friction of the flow of the product, does it not?
Yeah, I would think so. I think there's a little bit more sanity, after the initial reaction yesterday. There's a little more sanity and a little more, what does this actually mean?
Yeah.
I think it could be the situation where even if there are trades that have happened that haven't shipped, or if you have a bill of lading and what it will still not get tariffed or whatever. And again, we may be months away from that happening. So the other thing that could happen is that Chinese crushers, are looking to really stock up. A, because the prices are down, but B, because they want to have some large inventories that they can work from. So it may trigger an even larger early movement of canola in the beginning of the year. And whether that provides a little bit of price support or not, a little bit hard to say.
A common text that I had on Tuesday from the audience was, and I honestly I say that I agree with them, is we cannot build canola crush capacity fast enough here. And if this isn't a reminder for you about why those initiatives and that capital was flowing in, tied to obviously SAF and renewable diesel, this is a pretty stark reminder for you.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, we just finished 23-24 marketing year, and we crushed a record crop or record volumes of 11 million tons. So we've never done that before. We did 1 million tons alone in July. So that means that theoretically we can crush 12 million tons if you do that every month, 12 million tons in 24-25. But yeah, it's already an improvement over where we were when we had the last shutdown from China on canola. We're already in better shape, but and we can also benefit, I think, we're going to get stronger demand from Europe, and again, these lower prices may spur more demand and so on. So we may not miss the Chinese market as much as we did the last time around.
Yeah.
It's still
Yeah.
not. I'm not trying to downplay it, or I'm not trying to say there's no problem here. I was quoted in a newspaper article, and I just saw it today, and I went, "Oh, I wasn't quite saying that."
I hate when that happens.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, but it is different than the last situation. I think, and it's also different than what's been going on with Canadian beef to China as well, where that has to do with, again, licenses with plants. So this is a different scenario, but it is, I think there's a lot of concern out.
Yeah, there's a lot more shuffling of deck chairs too, because last time around we were still exporting a whole lot of canola oil to China.
Right.
So they were getting a lot of canola oil from Canada. And now they haven't bought from Canada, canola oil from Canada for probably a year, maybe longer, because it's all going into the US for renewable diesel or a lot of it for renewable diesel. So China, what are they going to do for canola oil? They can get some from Russia. But again, we may do much larger flows of seed into UAE where they crush it and then they ship the oil off to China. So, we can work around that. Although there are questions about whether this is going to apply to canola meal and to oil as well. The oil is a non-issue, but the meal, that could be an important factor too.
Curious what the US does, and not necessarily related, in retaliation for Canada, but uh, you and I have talked, and a lot of people in the market space have been talking a lot about this UCO coming out of China, and what, and there's a lot of people in farm country in the US very upset about that volume of UCO that has been coming into the country, competing with crops like soybeans. So I think that's a piece of this story that'll be interesting to watch here over the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think we're close to some kind of a decision there from the U.S. I don't know that it can help. It can help soybean prices in the U.S. for sure, and so you get some spillover support. But again, we're crushing at capacity in Canada, and even U.S. canola crushers are running full tilt. So we can't process a whole lot more within North America. But again, that would boost soy oil prices. So the crush margins should improve, and so then they can bid more for canola seed and so on. So there's some potential of support from that, and I think that's long overdue, that kind of a decision from the U.S.
Okay, so from the farmer's perspective, reaction to this, keep our wits about us. Obviously, we want to stay disciplined. No need to panic, but we're long inventory. And everybody has a different amount that is unsold, some zero, and some probably have sold the majority of their crop. What do farmers do here right now as we trade off of 576 in November? We're at the pretty close to the 1 year low here. What do we do now?
I think it is being patient. I think it's still being patient. That's what we've been telling people is to be patient even before this happened. I think that's still the case. I think this has a longer time frame, and so we don't need to panic, as you said. And I think there's still room for that. We're strong on thinking in terms of seasonal price behavior. So we're at the seasonal lows now. So this just brought those seasonal lows a little bit lower, but I still think there's room for prices to recover. This will just limit how much how quick that recovery is, or how much that recovery is. But no, there's nothing to say that this should trigger, oh boy, like dump it all before it gets even worse. I don't think that's the message we want to be putting forward.
Yeah, before we wrap up here, Chuck, any comments about the overall commodity complex, what we've been seeing?
Well, again, it's we do think in terms of seasonals and a lot, and not that prices follow them every year, but we're seeing markets for special crops, for wheat, for a number of these crops, starting to level off, or even maybe turn a little bit higher and things like that, which is very much in keeping with seasonals. So that's the reassuring part. It's just more the strength of how quickly or how much we come off those harvest lows. But it's keep calm and carry on.
Yeah, have a plan. Hey, Chuck, really appreciate you joining us here today on Real Ag Radio. Thanks. All the best to you.
You bet.